cloud. Biggest mistake a TV director can do. Forget to tell them to roll tape. Okay, we are recording in the cloud. This is the MOME Masterclass. I don't know the number, but it's audio production 2 with Michael Bacon and Steve Buenonotte. And today is the 2nd of July, 2021. And again, without further ado, I will hand the program over to Michael Bacon. Go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks very much, and welcome everybody to our second professional workshop regarding the music and the engineering and the audio for the MOME project. Karen, maybe you can help me flesh out the history of this. The funny thing when I was working on this is I had a folder and it's called MOME 2020, and of course we're well into 21. So my last memory of MOME 2020, I was in Florida and we had a meeting scheduled, and my cell phone was just about to die, and then shortly thereafter the COVID hit, and the whole thing just kind of got shelved. We'd never really, I think, internally stopped working on it, and the culmination of all the efforts of everybody in the team was finally kind of achieved when we had a recording session at Lehman. Was it 2 weeks ago, something like that? I can't remember. A couple of weeks ago on a Monday. And what happens in the creative process, particularly, I'm a film composer, and one of the things that I really drill into my students is that being a film composer is not an art, it's a craft. And you are part of a team of people who are contributing to a work of art, which hopefully when the MOME project gets out and on the air, that is the work of art. But the music that I've done and Donnie's done and Steve is craft. It's made to fit a particular need of the work of art. And for that reason, you have to be ready to make changes. You have to accept the fact that whatever you think about your work independently is not necessarily the most important thing. It's how it's perceived by the members of your team. So in this case, up until the night before the recording session, I remember, was it Sunday night, sorry, David Schwiddick told me he wasn't happy with one of the pieces that we had scheduled to be recorded on Monday at 10 o'clock. All of the parts had been written and orchestrated. So there are two ways of approaching that. And I'm only telling you this as an important lesson in terms of any of you who really want to go out in the world and make a living doing what you love, which is what I do. You go, oh, I'm really frustrated. I wish they'd liked it. And your two alternatives are to say, well, I'm sorry, it's too late. Can't do anything. All the parts are done. All the players are there. Everything's been done. Sorry. And if you take that road, then you are basically letting down your team. So from Sunday night to 10 o'clock the next morning, I had to figure out a plan for how I was going to accommodate that. And I sort of cobbled together couple of plans that I thought had a decent prospect of actually being achieved within the amount of time we had for it. So what we did is we did all the pre-orchestrated stuff first, got that all out of the way, and left some time for some pieces that could be improvised, and that both David and Karen and everybody else in the team could give input, because it wasn't orchestrated. It was all being made up on the spot. So you can't, I'm not advising anybody to go in and just start making stuff up on the spot, but you have to, in order to do something that is improvised, you have to be twice as better prepared than if you're handing out parts. So we did it that way. I think nobody really knew what was going on, but we kind of worked through it and eventually got something that I think everybody was really happy with, and I think is appropriate for the piece. So That being said, going back to the team, I mention often, because I'm very proud, I'm a Lehman College alumnus, and I was here, came back to Lehman. I came to Lehman in the 90s to flesh out some deficiencies in my musical education, which I did for 2 years. I was maintaining my job as a full-time film composer, but also going to college full-time. So it was quite an adventurous year, but I got through it and I got my degree, and I'm very proud of that. The team here is, for me, I don't want to say dream team because that's sort of a hackneyed expression now, but one of the things I believe very strongly with in education is that it shouldn't be the academic people up here, professors, associate professors, assistant professors, and then this other group of staff people, and then students. Those three things should not be separated. And since I've been teaching at Lehman, that's one of the things that I find hard. A lot of times I just don't see that there is any blending of those things, or not enough blending, I should say that. So when we conceived of this project, I think, in my mind at least, it was an opportunity to explore a truly blended experience with professors, with staff, and with students. So we gave the students an opportunity to interact with professional musicians, highly top of the session players in New York, some high in the live performance, some emerging artists, and of course students and staff and the professors. And I think my read on it is that we really did achieve that. And one of my dreams is to have a new program in Lehman, the BA in Music Technology. And we're trying to get people who might be interested in coming into the outside world, who are not academic necessarily, but roll on their more ability to exist and flourish in the popular culture world. And I feel like if I were going out and trying to recruit somebody, what would I would play an assembly of what we did last week, 2 weeks ago. So I think this session worked out really well. Our original vision, when we were kicking around all the ideas for what the music would be like, would be to have something that was not what you would expect for something like this. I mean, I've done a million television show openings, 15 seconds, 20, and there's kind of a way to do it that people are generally going to accept. So we decided to do something really raw, and I brought in sort of a jazz feel, which seemed to resonate with the other members of the committee. And then we pushed it even farther into more bebop, Coltrane, Miles Davis kind of thing, and came up with something which is really pretty edgy. And the way Steve conceived of the session is that it wouldn't be all kind of just a layering stuff on top of each other. We try to do as much as we possibly could with playing it live and get it be raw, get the leakage, get a funky microphone. Steve Runnins, you should talk about this, Steve, it's pretty funny. Some kind of a microphone that, I mean, the way I got it was deliberately meant to sound bad. That's the way I understood the microphone, which certainly wouldn't be something most people would choose, but that's what Steve did, and it really worked out very cool, because we got some sounds that, again, are not the typical kind of sounds that you expect. The texture of the piece. When I first came to New York, I've never had a very strong jazz background. In fact, I did history of jazz with Professor Cowell, who was an amazing professor. And one of the things I always liked is that in the book that we used as a textbook, he was one of the guys in the textbook that they profiled. So that's always good when your teacher's in the textbook. So this is before I came back to Lehman. I studied with a man named Don Sebeski, who is a legendary big band guy, and was able to morph his career into being a jingle arranger. But most of what he did came out of the big band area, which is kind of a dying art in terms of orchestrating for big band. It's something I absolutely love doing, and any chance I get to do it, I do it. So I thought of this as not only kind of a Coltrane bebop kind of thing, but also as an opportunity to write close spacing big band harmonies. So we had four, let's see, soprano, alto, tenor, baritone, four saxophones. We had drums, of course. We had keyboards. We had trumpet, and I did the bass. I pre-recorded the bass as a little bit of a hedge against. First of all, we really couldn't really we wanted to find a student bass player. That didn't seem to work out, but so I decided that with all the unknowns and all the live, to just keep the bass locked in with a pre-record MIDI bass, which I think sounded pretty decent, pretty believable. If you put a lot of times when you take a sampled instrument, you can kind of tell it's sampled, but if you put it in a milieu of real instruments, its believability is enhanced. And I think in this case, I haven't heard all the final mixes, but I think it's going to be fine. But we kind of had, at least we had this very solid basis for this session, and I think that was a good choice. So all of the tracks were recorded. Steve will go into the recording aspects of it, and the more technical stuff, but that's pretty much what it's really a nice feeling when you conceive of something you want to do and it doesn't fall into a very broad category, and I don't think this did at all. And also, when you're going into places that are somewhat uncharted, you have the opportunity to fail larger than if you do a more conventional type of production. And I feel like we succeeded in this. I'm very happy with the way it came out. It's just crazy, goofy, kind of everything we hoped it would be. So that's kind of the musical journey that we all were on. And one other thing that was really fun is Danya here today? I didn't see her. Danya is a former student of mine, music major, and a wonderful singer. And one of my favorite groups from the late 50s, early 60s was Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross. And they were three singers. And there's really never been anybody like them since. And they were big, scat, three-part harmony, kind of almost horn-like sort of orchestration. And Annie Ross was the lead singer, and she had this crazy ability she was kind of an alto, but she could jump up into the high trumpet range just instantaneously. She had a really strange voice. So I asked Danya to kind of check out her, and when Steve did the original mock-up, Steve got his wife Gina to do the scatting. So Danya sort of had an idea what we were looking for, and so Danya did the vocals and did them really quickly, and I think it really comes out very cool. And I don't think anybody's heard any vocals like that for 30, 40 years. At least I haven't. So another part, before I open this up to questions, if there are any, another part that I really drill into my students is that whatever you do, what can you do that nobody else can do? What makes you unique? And being the age that I am, and my history of jazz and popular music, a little light bulb went off when I heard the piece that I'd written of that having a female vocalist scatting like Annie Ross might be something unique, and I think it was. So I'll shut up now. If anybody wants to ask any questions or comments, criticisms, the floor is yours.
Okay, we can put, you can type in the chat as well as we go along. I don't see anything there right now. So At this point, you will let's turn it over to Steve, maybe. Okay, Steve.
Yeah, okay, and please feel free to stop me with questions along the way if anyone has any. Um, yeah, this was a really fun project. Uh, I knew going into this that it was we were going to have a good time. And Michael and I have worked on lots of projects together. So there was and Brendan and I and Karen and I and you know we've all kind of been in the heat of battle before, and there was a certain level of comfortability going into this that kind of you know made all the unknown and the question marks sort of smoothed out a little bit, knowing that you know it was going to be a fun ride regardless of what happened. From a recording standpoint, uh, just a little background. About maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the session, I had uh, I didn't want to, but my hand was sort of forced to do some repairs in the studio that required completely dismantling the console. And when I put everything back together, I was getting all sorts of warning buzzes and chimes, and um, you know the room is a very fickle room at the best of circumstances. So when I was able to get everything up and running again, I was just a little concerned going into a session, knowing, especially the night before, that there was stuff that was you know that needed to be altered, and we were going to have to do a lot of exploratory stuff, which means time. And I was really nervous about that because I didn't want any of time. I didn't want any time wasted because of me, because of the room not working, because of a technical issue. Um, a lot of the young folk make fun of me for being over prepared, and I can't stress enough how that really played a part in this. I spent an entire day at the studio tracing cables and climbing under things, and you can't see from my little zoom thing, but I'm not a guy who likes to climb under things, and I was all over the place in that room making sure everything was working properly. I found a couple of bugs. I fixed a couple of things that I didn't even know were broken, and because of it the room worked flawlessly, which was really amazing. And another luxury that I have at Lehman is that, especially now during COVID and the room isn't being used that much, I had the luxury of setting up prior to the session. The session was on a Monday. I set up on Friday. Um, I got to go slow. I took my time. I tested every mic. I tested every headphone. Um, it was, I don't want to brag, but it was the neatest cabling job I've ever done in my life. Um, because we were going to have film people walking around, and the last thing I wanted someone to do was to trip while they were holding a camera. So one of the concerns, which is normally not a concern of mine, is to make sure that the floor was clear. Normally, that's not even on my radar, let alone a concern. So, as a matter of fact, I'm going to maybe show some pictures of the setup. So, uh, so this was the way the room was set up. I had drums over here behind gobos. Um, this was the conductor. This was Michael. Okay, so he was sort of in the center. I had saxophone over here, obviously Rhodes over there, and then this shows the trumpet station. So some gobos in between there. These probably ultimately weren't necessary, but I put them up anyway just because. Just in case, you know, again, some of the stuff probably wasn't ultimately too necessary. You know, the drummer Willie Martinez, who I saw play during one of the filming of the first episode in Queens. I mean, he clearly was an amazing drummer, but you never know what someone's going to be like in a studio, and you know, I always sort of hope for the best and plan for the worst, and he was absolutely amazing. And to top it all, he wasn't a heavy hitter, so I probably could have gotten away without having gobos. If I were to do another session with him again, I probably would have, you know, maybe not have used the top tier of gobos. But I just didn't know, so I tried to keep it, you know, pretty, you know, pretty vanilla. Um, As far as mics go, I have some of the mics that I used with me that I have personally. Stop share. For the kick drum, one of my I've been really liking this mic lately. I use it on a lot of things. This is the Electro Voice RE20. It is a dynamic microphone. It's pretty much been one of the de facto broadcast voice microphones for decades. I use it pretty much solely on kick now, especially jazz kick drum, like a bass drum, bass guitars, floor toms, a whole bunch of other things. It's also built like a tank. If anyone ever breaks into my house, I could, kind of throw it at them. May not kill them, but they'll never dance again. So it's a good mic. It actually has a nice character to it. It's not quite as low frequency wise as some other kick mics, which gives a nice little thud for jazz. Let's see, for the snare drum, actually don't have these mics. I'll go back to sharing. For the snare drum and the toms, I used these guys here. I started using these microphones at Lehman because we film a lot of stuff, and having the clip-on mics makes it really nice to not have stands. And I've just really grown to love them. So I've sort of moved away from my tried and true Shure SM57 on the snare drum and Sennheiser 421s on the toms, which is pretty much the de facto way to record drums. I pretty much use these now exclusively on drums, and I really like them. And actually, the drummer brought his vintage snare drum that was just probably one of the most gorgeous sounding snare drums I've ever heard in my life. So this did a pretty good job of capturing it. I'm happy with the way the drum sounded with this. And for the overheads was my tried and true Neumann KM184s, a cardioid condenser microphone. Okay, straight down on the. Do I have a picture of the mic'd up drum set? I should. I'm not a big fan of the 184s, but they bloom as overheads. Let's see. I thought I did. Rhodes. Yeah, maybe this. You could at least see them over here. So pretty much just pointing straight down. I usually try to aim for the ride cymbal. And if there's another cymbal, I try to kind of put them in between. And this overhead, I usually try to aim it somewhere in between the crash cymbal and the hi-hat. Usually I find that gives me the best. I mean, sometimes I'll come in and move them on the spot, but this was actually a pretty decent setup. The kick drum mic was in the hole, about maybe an inch in the hole, aimed at the beater. For the trumpet was a Sennheiser 421. Trumpets are loud, and they're very high frequency, well, relatively high frequency. Perfect mic to capture this. I didn't need a condenser. I didn't really want to get anything too intricate with that. This gave me all that I needed with that. I think the trumpet sounds great. Even the Harman mute, which you use, sounds great with that. And lastly, the sax. I put two microphones on the sax, and this is where it gets a little fun. I used a Shure KSM 141. I thought I had a picture of one. Yeah. Which is a small diaphragm microphone. It has a cardioid and an omni setting. I used obviously the cardioid for this. The saxophone, I really wanted to get the breath. I wanted to get the whoa, should he play it. I know the main theme, it really isn't a very breathy thing, but I wanted that there to capture it. And then the other mic I use, and that is this guy here, which is it's a really funky looking microphone. This is called the Placid Audio Copperphone, and it is a Russian submarine intercom microphone, and it sounds gloriously awful. Let's see.
It sounds like this. Can you guys hear this? Because I can't hear it over here. Does it sound bad? Yeah, it sounds really bad, and in a very cool sort of way.
So yeah, I wanted this to kind of be the star, and so let's Actually, before I get to the mix, I want to just talk about settings and stuff like that. So at the studio, we have 16 channels of Grace microphone preamps. I really, really wanted to use them, and they started giving me a problem. One that I still haven't figured out why. I think it's some sort of. I'm actually not even sure what it is. I'm just gonna be the kind of thing where I'm gonna have to take a day and trace cables and stuff. But I abandoned that pretty quickly, and I went to the console's built-in microphone preamps, which are pretty good. Um, but I used some outboard gear on this, and it's worth noting. So I'll just talk about it real quick. Please stop me if anyone has any questions. For the kick drum and the snare drum, I use the Empirical Labs distressors. Um, I didn't write my settings down. Well, I was pretty much tweaking them throughout the day. I didn't really get too deep into it. I know I started off with the kick and the snare probably at a 4-to-1 with a with a kind of a mid attack and a fast release. Um, Usually my favorite setting with this is the distortion, the harmonic distortion on 3, which is I think this is the even distortion. And it's not distortion like a guitar amp distortion. It just adds a little kind of warmth to the sound. And I didn't use any of the detector stuff, the mid or the high pass filter, none of that stuff. So these were on the kick and the snare. The trumpet was going through the Pendulum audio compressor. This is a very fast, setting compressor. There's not a whole lot to do here with this. I use the vintage settings, which gives me a preset attack and release. And then from there, it's just ratio and threshold, which was, a ratio is I think around 3-to-1. I started off with, and then I tweaked from there. And I didn't use the low pass filter on that. I'm sorry, high pass filter. And then the saxophone was through the Animod. This is another thing where, sort of this again was, I'm really not too familiar with this box. I've only used it a couple of times, but this sort of gives me again a sort of preset attack and release, and then just my threshold, was tweaked as well. I really kind of moved this around a lot because he played several different instruments, and each one sort of had its own sort of character. So I was tweaking this one probably the most. And then lastly, the Rhodes went through the Expressor, and this is really one of the first times I've ever used this box. I got to be honest with you, I'm probably, unless I get more intimately familiar with it, I'm probably not going to use it again on a tracking session because it's just a lot. It's a very deep box, and I found it like I was spending too much time looking at it and trying to go about it. To me, I like compressors when I'm tracking to be a knob, a button, done. Like I don't want to be fiddling with stuff because there's not enough time. So I probably started for the Rhodes, probably maybe 2-to-1 with a fast attack and release. I probably used the warm mode. I didn't do any side chain, and I didn't. This is like a limiter, I think, that goes on, kind of after the compression. I probably had that off. So I didn't. This was, the Rhodes is not that dynamic of an instrument to begin with, and Chris, our Rhodes player, is not a real heavy hitter, so I probably didn't even need to use it in the first place, but I wanted to because I could. I'm a big fan of using compression on the way in because a hardware compressor will sound better than a software compressor. So I tend to heavily compress as I record, which is not the typical way to do it, or at least it hasn't been in the past. It's becoming more of an accepted way. Go ahead.
It's really fun to see. You're showing pictures of actual things where I think most of us are used to seeing pictures of equipment and their virtual and their plugins. If you were teaching someone to become an audio engineer, do you think that there's a value to starting with the actual hardware?
Oh yeah.
First, and then evolving.
Yeah, and there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, compressors are in my opinion anyway, half about what they do, their function of gain reduction, and half about their character. Most people, so if you look at your chain of things, right, you have your microphone, you have your mic preamp, you have your compressor, and then you have your audio interface. So each one of those things has a play in the quality of your sound. And in my opinion, the microphone and the compressor are probably, trump the mic pre and the interface as far as just how much influence that has over the sound. And compressors, some compressors more than others, definitely change your sound, and they're used. It's a creative choice. This same way you would reach for a Telecaster or a Stratocaster or a Gibson Les Paul guitar or a Fender P bass over a Fender J bass. Those characteristics of each compressor sort of really make a difference. So using a hardware compressor gets you more familiar with that as opposed to something that's emulating that. And um, software compressors have a lot of built-in stuff where you can't really go wrong with it, or it kind of does stuff that's sort of hyper real, whereas a real compressor you could really screw things up. So it's kind of nice to be able to have that safety net taken away and really kind of clip it or make it sound real nasty, or vice versa. So on top of the fact that just in general it sounds better, I've never met a hardware compressor that sounded better than the best software compressor. It just is. There's just something magical about going through 10 pounds of metal that just makes the sound more special. And recording in general through a compressor is important because depending on how dynamic of a range the instrument. So for example, the Rhodes, it's not a very dynamic instrument. You're really not going to have a whole lot of benefit there if you ran out of compressors and you wanted to, which one to pull. The Rhodes would have been the first one I'd pull. The snare drum, I in hindsight, knowing the way Willie plays now, I really wish I had a compressor on the toms, because he was very, very light-handed throughout almost the entire session, but when it came time for the crash and burn endings, he was banging on that tom like it was going out of style. So I had no way of knowing that. Had I had a compressor engaged in that, it would have clipped it, it would have grabbed it, it would have pulled it down for me, and it would have saved me some time in post, and it would have sounded better. So ultimately, that's something that I wish I had. Um, you know, Lehman is actually the first time I've ever really been in a situation where I'm tracking without a lot of compression because I don't have a lot to use. We don't have a whole lot of compressors there. My home studio, every channel has a compressor. So every input I have a compressor for each input. When I do location recording, the box that I bring has a compressor for every input. So I have the ability to even put a little bit on just to catch something that goes crazy. If I know what I'm recording and who I'm recording and the piece I'm recording and it's not dynamic, you're all right. But or vocal especially, I mean, look at what Danya sang. I don't think Danya sang anything that was overly crazy, but her range from soft to loud was pretty intense for this session. So having a compressor on that, which I did, I think I used the distress on her as well, is very important. Okay, so let's move on to the mix in the session, and I'll play some music. So this is pretty much everything here. So this is the main title. I'll focus on this for now. This is the drum. Let me get these are the drums. Okay, so we have the kick and snare overhead. Notice I have everything bussed. Okay, I know I kind of sort of went over this in the first masterclass, but the way I like to route things in my sessions is everything goes through a bus, and that everything, or mostly everything, goes through an aux send. The only time I won't send something through an aux send is if it's a single track, like the bass, for example, and I'm really not doing much to it. But everything else goes through an aux send. Even the percussion, that the ratchet sound that Michael we had, that was right. That was a synth generated thing. And the keyboard, I know I played you guys the video last time of it. Right. So that all goes through a bus. And then for me, I like to have something called a submaster, which is what I put all my my master effects on. So for me, my submaster has a bus compressor and a limiter on it as well. This way, my master fader is nothing. It has nothing on it. So any volume change, anything I do to the master fader is after all of my effects. And I sort of like this separation. I don't need it, but it's there just for my feng shui. Just a little bit of a separation. I like to try to keep my sessions very neat. If you notice, everything's color coded, everything's labeled. All of my buses are caps. All of my tracks are lowercase. All of my buses, I try to keep them even in numerical order, just because if I'm looking for something, I know where to look, and it shaves off a few seconds. And it may not sound like a big deal, but in the grand scheme of things, however many times I look, if you take all those seconds that I save, doing that, it adds up to real time at the end of a session. So efficiency is key. It's not even key. It's crucial. Without it, I can't function. So the sax player did multiple takes. So he did alto, bari, tenor, and soprano sax. Here's an example of the copperphone in action. So for example, here's the take my group off. Here is the alto sax with the Shure KSM 141. Here's the copperphone. And here's them together. Very subtle. To me, it's a little bit more noticeable on the bari. So here's the bari. Oh, no, come on, don't crash. All right. Give me 1 second, guys. I've been noticing that my DAW does not like Zoom. They're not friends. Try to take them out for drinks, get them all happy, but they're just not friends. All right, so the bari sax, to me, is the most noticeable with the copperphone, obviously because it's such a low instrument. Where's my bari sax? So here's the Shure. Oh, here's the Shure. And here's the copperphone. One of the things I like about this mic too, and I'll just take a second to talk about it. If you look at the waveforms of both of these, so the copperphone is on the bottom. They're just so different, and I don't really have to worry about phasing issues. It doesn't really give me a very similar waveform, so that I have no fear of putting two microphones. If I would have put two microphones that close together on the same source, I'd have to really worry about phase. With the copperphone, I have no worries about that. Let's listen to that snare drum because it was beautiful. Had a ring to it that was really amazing. Let's see what other notable things to talk about in this. Let's talk about reverb. Not my favorite, but I did some really nasty reverb on this, and I think it's worth noting. I'm not a big reverb fan. I know Michael and I tend to fight over this periodically in fun. Michael's a very big proponent of reverb, and I'm not. And I really think that reverb is making a comeback quite viciously, actually, and I'm doing my best to try to stay current by against my better judgment, using lots and lots of reverb. So when it came time for this, I just didn't. My biggest fear with this was I didn't want it to sound like a polished jazz recording, and what I captured was a polished jazz recording. So I wanted to try to make it sound dirty. funky. I wanted something. I want some edge to it. I didn't want it to just sound like a really clean, version of what was in a room. And I think this reverb really kind of messed things up in a good way. If I take the tenor solo, so here it is with the reverb. Which, by the way, I got to mention, I've been doing this a long time with Michael. I don't think I've ever heard him say after a single take, yeah, that's it, we can move on. We always get a safety. This solo was so awesome that we were just like, that's it. I don't even want to hear something else. It was pretty amazing. Let me take the reverb off and show you what it sounds like without the verb. Is that it? Hold on. Where's my... This is with the reverb. That's pretty significant. For me anyway, that's a pretty radical change of sound. I mean, other than that, I didn't really use a whole lot of reverb. Let's see, what did I do? So
What was that reverb, Steve?
this is called Verb Suite from Stephen Slate. And it's a copy of the let's see, I don't even know what it's a copy of. But this program is pretty prolific. It gives me the opportunity to use let's see, I have a whole bunch of different units that it sort of everything from the Bricasti to the famous lexicon reverbs, and it gives me a whole bunch of options to kind of mess with it. So and I'm using a pretty significant amount of it here. Again, not something that I normally do. I had a different different kind of vox on the reverb. So let's listen to the vocal. Hopefully, Don, you won't get angry with me for playing the isolated track. So pretty significant and pretty different, right? So let's take that off and just listen to it. So yeah, and I left a lot of funkiness in there. Like I left talking. I left all that stuff in there. I wanted it to sound kind of funky, drums in and of themselves. I don't think, did I put verb on the snare? No. Oh yeah, I put a little bit of reverb on the snare. So, but in and of themselves, not, cymbals are very shiny, very, very crystal. You can hear the drums, the horns bleed through. So, I mean, it wasn't perfect isolation, but I think it was good enough. I think the only editing that I did to this whole piece was I think I took a different crash and burn ending from a different take. I had to kind of tame those toms a little bit. Like I said, he was very heavy on those toms just at that one moment. As a matter of fact, the first time he did it, I think it clipped and I got really nervous. I was really sweating Michael going, that was the take, because it was completely ruined because I had the drums set way too hot because I had no idea he was going to start banging that loud on them. I think I fixed a couple little notes here and there. But for the most part, yeah, and I think this was from an earlier take, but there wasn't a whole lot of editing to do with this. I think everything was pretty much done. I think pretty much everything was done the way. Oh, is there stuff in the chat that I missed? Yeah. So I left my wife's background vocals in.
Bada bump, bada bump, bada bump, do ba da ba dee ba da do, bump da bump bow,
So this is actually kind of a fun thing. Recording vocals is is, you know, kind of half psychology, half you know, half kind of musicality. Uh, Danya was really uncomfortable singing this. I don't think that she was. I don't think that this was something that was in her wheelhouse. And you know, we all knew that she can do it. So it was just a matter of making her comfortable enough to do it. My method of doing this is usually being a goofball because I'm good at that. You know, and it disarms a singer and it gets them comfortable. You know, I know some singers that just, you know, you light a candle in the room, or you lower the lights, or you shut the windows to, like, I have a curtain on my live room and I could shut the curtains on it so that we can't see each other. Sometimes it's just a matter of doing that. It makes them more comfortable to sing. You know, I love to give singers a flack because they're usually the ones that complain the loudest, but in reality, their instrument is biological. You know, I could be half dead and you hand me a guitar and I'll play it. But you can't do that as a singer. So, you know, you really have to be a little, you know, aware of that and treat it, you know, with kid gloves. So, all right, without further ado, let me play you the original mock-up, and then I will play you the, what am I doing here? I'll play you the mock-up and then I'll play you the mix. Okay, I lied. So that was the original mock-up that was approved. Okay, and this is the extended version of the main title theme with all the new instruments. Okay, and I think I will close off. Let me play you some of the, let's play a little bit more music. Let me actually get out of my DAW. It's been behaving so well that I don't want to give it a chance to not behave. Let me play you some of the other mixes of the other beds. No, I don't clean the bleed. I kind of, well, first of all, in these pieces, I sort of wanted it. But even if I didn't, I normally wouldn't unless it was so intrusive. You know, so for example, if my favorite example of bleed, other than the Led Zeppelin stuff, is Christina Aguilera. I think the song is Beautiful. If you listen to the beginning, you can hear the click bleed in and out of the vocal. You know, so something like that where they probably had an instrumentation where they thought the click would you know, fade into whatever the instrumentation was, and they pulled it, and then she was there naked with the, you know, just her vocal. So in a situation like that, I might clean up a track, but otherwise, no, I'll leave the bleed in there. The longer I've been doing this, the more I'm not scared of bleed. When I first started as a recording engineer, I did everything I could to get rid of bleed. You know, like people like really want me to sit in the bathroom, like, yeah, you can't be with all the other instruments, you're too loud. Like I would stuff people all over the place. I don't anymore. I embrace it, and it's never been a problem. So let's go to the Manhattan bed. Let's go to the first one, because this was the one that was written. Oh, I have to show this session. All right, let's see if it'll behave a little longer. So again, everything color coded, everything going through buses, labeled. So this was the bed. These two beds actually are. I have a bunch of changes that Michael had emailed me that I haven't implemented yet. So it's still evolving a little bit. And let's see. Let's go to the other Manhattan bed, which was really fun. This was sort of, this is where the kind of the rubber meets the road sort of thing. It was there was no real plan for this. I mean, there was a little bit of a plan, but it was an evolving thing, and it was just a bunch of musicians in a room with someone at the helm saying, "Hey, let's try this." No, okay, that was good. That wasn't good. Let's do this. This sort of kind of mix and match thing, and this is to me where magic really happens in a session. And I was able to get, out of all the takes that we did, I got two really viable takes. I think 14 was one of them. And this is the one that I think I want to play this first. I think this is the one that everyone really oohed and awed over. I know when I was in the control room, David Schwiddick really responded to this one. He was trying to articulate what he wanted to us, and I think this was exactly what he was looking for. And in a client-based world such as ours, to see the client be that happy is a really, it's something that'll never get old to me. So here it is, the Manhattan Bed 2, take 14. So, a couple of things I want to say about this piece, because it's, to me, first of all, just the Rhodes. First of all, Chris, the Rhodes player, really kicked the tar out of this one. But the Rhodes has this beautiful sort of rotary effect, where or tremolo effect, where it kind of comes back and forth. One of the things that I love about this particular piece is that, as a musician, for a long time, I've been surrounded by amazing musicians my whole life, and I don't want to say this from a place of arrogance. I've seen it all, and I understand it. And it's not to say that I can do it or that it makes it any less genius, but when I see someone do something amazing, I could see how they went from point A to point B. What really amazes me is when I don't understand how they got from point A to point B. This style of music, I would have never been able to play it ever in a million years. I don't understand how any of those notes came about and why the next one came after the one that came after. I have no idea. And I'm impressed by that, because to me, I can't, it's dots that I can't connect. As a musician, as an engineer, as a producer, all of these things, I just wouldn't have known how to do it. So that's personally for me, that's why I get impressed with stuff like this. But I think all of these guys really did a great job on this. The drums used mallets on the drums, so they were, there wasn't that, just kind of little flourishes here and there. Really cool. I'll play the, oh God, I think it was 12. I should have marked these. For as fastidious as I am. Actually, I did mark it. It's 13, okay. Another fun, viable take. You have to understand, these are going to be under dialogue. Okay, this isn't meant to be like a big, it's not supposed to be a big flashy thing. It's supposed to sort of be set back, and it's kind of subdued. The last thing I want to say about these sessions, and it's a very important thing, and I kind of wanted to save it for the last little bit. I mentioned before that Michael and I had done a whole bunch of these sessions, throughout the last 10 or so years that we've been working together. And, there's a level of comfortability and of, kind of known quantity that I know the way he likes things, he knows what I'm capable of, and we sort of, we don't step on each other's way. But, another thing and another luxury that I have here at Lehman is I have support. I have the support of Kian, I have the support of Nate, and even Brendan, so, having a team and people there that I know are capable and are attentive and are looking around and knowing what's going on, and to have that. So normally when I work outside of Lehman, I have just me. So if I have to do something, so for example, there's a quick video that did end up coming. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Get out of this, and this is where that sort of comes into play. It's a short little video, but I wonder if I can find it real quick. No. There's Chris, our Rhodes player. There's Willie Martinez. Some schmo behind the console. I guess I don't know what they did with the video, but anyhow, the video was of me talking to Kiana outside in the live room, asking her to move a gobo down. And the sax player and the trumpet player were trying to communicate, and they were kind of doing that behind the gobo, and it was wasting time. So I just had her pull the gobo down, and we didn't really need it. To have such a stupid little mundane thing. If it were me there alone, I would have had to have said that I'm coming out. I would have had to walk all the way around, get the gobo down, come all the way back. The amount of time it would have wasted to do that. And she's there. She's ready to go. She knew exactly what I was talking about. She got it down. Nate was there, kind of hitting the talk back for me. All of these things that were happening, they may seem sort of mundane, but they're a cog in a wheel that's moving very fast. And you have to pay attention. You have to know what's going on. While Michael's talking to the musicians, I'm listening to him, because somewhere buried in whatever they're talking about is a bar number that I need to get to, so that when they say, okay, ready to go, I'm not like, what was that bar 15? Is that, where is that? It's there. It's ready to go. When you're in a session like this, the musician's getting paid hourly. The studio in a pro situation would be charging money hourly. So shaving seconds wherever you can saves a lot of money. Now, what do we have? 5 musicians plus an engineer plus a film crew plus a studio. Now, imagine we were paying for all of that per hour. Okay, even saving a half hour is a huge amount of money. All of those people that you're paying. So to have support, to have assistants kind of doing this and all that stuff, it's not a luxury, it's an essential. And it really, the Lehman has, as Michael said, the finest crew, and really there was never a point where I thought this was going to be derailed. It was all very, very, very smoothly, and it was textbook. So cool. That's it. That's all I got. Questions?
Okay.
Thoughts, comments? No one threw a tomato, so I suppose that's a good thing.
That was amazing. I mean, like I said, I could hear the cigarette smoke in the room when you added the reverb.
I was drinking a cognac throughout most of this.
Yeah, in a silk robe with.
Okay.
Okay.
They wouldn't let me do the cigar. Something with the fire alarm system.
Yeah. No, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Steve and Michael. So, questions, guys. For those of you that worked on the session, I don't know how many are here. Thoughts about your reaction and actually participating in it. Anybody? Just open up your mic.
I'd love to speak quickly, if you don't mind. That's the first time that I'm hearing the Manhattan music, and wow, oh my word, that was incredible. Just how it evolved. I know firsthand what it is for feedback to come in the night before the session and you have everything planned, and how much work it is to change.
I don't think you know anything about that, Karen.
No, I don't know. I don't really. Yeah. Right. Right. What am I talking about? But I just have to say, from the other side of things now, it just so better. It encapsulates the mood, particularly of the first half of that segment where they're talking about the Manhattan segment. Those of you who are on the shoots and who are there, Tatiana, shout out to Tatiana and Kristen who are here. It's talking about all of these business owners and these shop owners who lost all of their business at the same time, right? And they didn't even know if they were going to be able to continue on. And it's a lot. The costume industry is talking about cogs and wheels, right? Like all in every type of entertainment venue you can think of, film, TV, Broadway, theater, there's costumes. And so, these guys didn't have any protective measures in place. So, from a musical standpoint and telling that story, the original kind of track, the mood was not quite perfectly aligned with what ended up being captured. So that's why
I also think it's worth noting that we didn't have video for these beds.
Exactly, which is a different kind of way of working in this type of project. Yeah, normally you guys would get a rough cut or a picture lock or something and then be able to score to the picture. But we're trying to do these things in tandem, which is a much tougher job for you guys to come up with mood, only with like, oh, this is what we're shooting. You don't actually have the visuals. You don't actually hear what they're saying.
Well, how much did you guys know about the subject matter as you were composing, Michael, or you were conducting? You're muted.
You're muted.
Go muted.
We had a little clip from Manhattan, and that was the critical one. However, I think what Karen is talking about is there's a difference between a cue and a bed. A bed is something that is kind of abstract, and you say you want something to kind of move this piece along, as opposed to a cue where you're actually making changes and evolving and getting complex and simple based on what's been shot. So, yeah, we kind of so certainly the title music was definitely a cue, because I mean that must have been the 10th version of that we did, something like that, till we got this final. So yeah, I think probably if I were to do it again, I probably would have done a session where we had the, let's say, the Manhattan costume industry really defined the way, Karen, you just said it. And I don't know, maybe I didn't take the time, or for whatever reason I wasn't, just didn't focus on that was going to be a kind of a dark scene, which ended up being so. But hopefully, I think that at the end of that, though, there is some hope, and I'm hoping that you heard 14, which is a really slow, and then 13, the second one Steve played, I put bass. What else did I put on? I think it's just bass on that one, and that's the main theme. But it's not jolly, but it might be a really nice way.
And I also think it's worth noting, which Karen, close your ears. I haven't started on it yet. The Staten Island bed, I'm going to try to take the trumpet line to one of the outtakes and create something around it that's a bit more what was the word you were using to call the Staten Island thing, kind of singer-songwriter-ish, kind of moody in that way, acoustic sort of thing. It's got a little bit more modern for that bed as well. Danya and I worked on a bed for the Bronx that missed the mark as well as far as the mood. It was a great tune, and I took her vocals and I took her. I used elements of her keyboard track and created a new piece around it. Do we have time for those, or are we running low on time?
No, we have about 15 minutes, so we could go.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to know like what the process is for you guys to actually select the like which I guess you would say soundbite. Would it be soundbite? Is that the proper term?
You talking about like editing up the piece to fit the
yeah
film?
to fit the film. So like, are you like, do you have to run through all of the content in order for you to make sure it's the right fit?
Michael, you want to take this?
Yeah, well, I think, Tatiana, your question would be is, we do these beds that are not done to any particular time. How do we make them fit the picture once the picture's done? And we're all very lucky to be working in the modern age of digital technology, where that is very easy to do. I mean, when I first started in film scoring, everything was on tape, and if you want to try to fix something, you pull out a razor blade and hoped. And if you cut it in the wrong place and it fell down, that might be the end of that take. So nowadays, it's so easy to, for instance, the piece Steve is talking about, where it was too moody, but Steve was able to write kind of another track around and keep the good parts of that and make it a more up-tempo kind of thing. So I think it's probably seems harder than it is to make stuff fit. Did I answer your question, Tatiana?
It definitely answers the question, but maybe also because like I'm looking from the outside, this is like, you guys are experts, so it might be easier for you to like, your selection process might come very quickly, maybe?
I think it's a matter of we get the information of what's needed. So, for example, uh, uh, like with the Bronx bed, Karen was like, "Well, we need a 2 minute version of that." So the original version that I had, I think, was a minute and 30 seconds. So I mean, it's about as vanilla as it can get, because I don't have to worry about hitting any points on the screen. So I just try to take what I did and make it as musical as possible. So, what can I repeat for 30 more seconds, to or repeat and embellish and build, so that the piece still has some modicum of an ebb and flow, and it makes musical sense, and there's no rough, kind of jarring movement in it that would make someone go, "Oh, what was that?" You could always tell when an editor edits music that isn't a musician, because there's cuts in the middle of bars, there's the tail end of a cymbal crash comes in out of nowhere, or things that most people don't think to look for, that a musician would spot right away. So and also I have the luxury of going into this piece and taking the individual elements of it and editing from that way. So whereas if let's say Curtis, our editor, was editing the music, he's only got the final mix. He's got a stereo track, and that's it. So if the tail end of a cymbal is coming over somewhere and he doesn't want it, I could always delete that, because I have the cymbal separate from everything else, whereas he can't. So for us to do those things, we could do it more efficiently, and also because we are musicians, and a video editor may not be a musician, so what I mean, it's sort of our thing to do that.
Tatiana, I think maybe I missed maybe some of the essence of your question, and I think maybe you were also asking, how do you know what kind of music is going to fit? And if that was your question, and I believe you are a filmmaker, not a musician, that process is for you to describe in any way you can what the music you're looking for, and it's for the composer to come up with that and interpret your non-musical words musically, and go through the process of, well, that's kind of okay, but this is a more neutral kind of a section, and that's your job is to say what you want. The composer's job is to get it for you.
So Kiana, to answer your question, no, there was only 2 beds recorded that day. So there's in total there are the Manhattan bed that we just heard. So there's 3 versions of that we recorded that day. There's the Bronx bed, which I'll play you just really quickly if I can. There's the Staten Island bed, which is yet to be created. And what was the other one that I did? The Brooklyn bed, which is kind of I'll play you a little clip of that too if I can have another just a few minutes of this. Matter of fact, I'll play them right now. This is the Zoom, get out of the way. This is the original Bronx bed. So this piece was a little too moody, and it was a little too slow. What we didn't know, and again, I don't know if this was anyone's fault. Knowing me, it was probably told to me 20 times. Was that this was a show about video game people? Yeah, this was totally wrong for that. So I didn't really have a lot of time, and I didn't want to kind of leave Danya's stuff out of it. So I took her vocal, I sped it up, and I took her keyboard part and I just replayed it a little differently, and I just kind of added a faster beat and some, jingly jangly video game sort of stuff. Yeah, it's kind of a similar thing, a similar key. I mean, I stayed, in the minor key and everything, and yeah, that's that. This is the a little bit of the Brooklyn bed, which was a little bit more. Who gave me direction for this? Actually, Michael, I think you actually gave me direction with this. You wanted something a little alt rock, I think was your saying. And I didn't want to get too nuts with it, but this is what I came up with. So that's the all of the beds. The Staten Island one is coming soon, Karen. And yeah, that's the music.
Quick question, Steve. With the exception of Danya's vocals, everything else in those beds is software instruments, right? Like the only. Oh, really?
No, very much no.
Oh,
Actually,
okay.
the Bronx stuff is all synths.
Right.
But the Brooklyn bed, I'm playing guitar, I'm playing bass, and the drums they're live, but they're library drums, but they're multi-tracked drums, and whatever keyboards I'm playing there, I'm actually playing them. So I mean, it is a keyboard, but it's humanly.
If I could ask something in the couple of minutes we have left, it's about the relationship between you two guys through the process, because something I think Curtis and I relate to, whereas on the video side, it's like having a writer, director, and an editor in an edit room. And I started in the 70s where we were locked together for weeks at a time. And there's sort of a blending of creativity there that starts in an edit room. And I've told this to a couple of people. I always used to get ticked off when I didn't get a writing credit on something that I edited, because I thought I was every much as responsible for creating the content. But could you talk a little bit about the relationship between the writer, composer, conductor, and the engineer, performer, recordist? What are the proper terminologies? I don't even know. But talk about the relationship professionally in the creating of this project between you two guys.
I think that this one, I think this is a little unique, just I think because Michael and I have worked together on so many projects that I don't think that there's at least from the onset, there's no sort of like lines or barriers, or at least he hasn't, he still keeps hiring me. So I suppose that I've done something right in the past, but like there's no, I don't know. I don't think of that when I'm working with Michael, because I know that ideas are free. And if it works, it works, and it's not about credit, and it's not about, look, we both have a common goal, and who cares? At the end of the day, who cares? We just want to get it done, and we want to get it done right. And then we'll sort out all the other stuff afterwards. And it's never been, I don't, I'll let Michael speak to this, and whatever he wants to say, but I've never, if I even sort of smell that sort of stuff, I tend to run in the other direction. I don't like working with people that are very kind of credit oriented. To me, it's just about getting the job done. There's no time for that. You know, and I don't know. This is you know, Michael can do what I can do. I can do what he does, and it's not about that. It's about, you know, okay, he wrote this piece. Let's get it. It's awesome. Let's get it done. Let's do it. If there's more stuff to do. Yeah, I'll take that. You know, or hey, can you do that? I don't have time for that. Or it's that sort of thing. And it's you work with someone long enough, and the dance becomes second nature. You know, kind of like I said, like even Kiana and I have been on a lot of sessions together, and you know, she knows what I'm thinking, and hopefully I know what she's thinking, other than, you know, that I talk too much. You know, and you know, it's sort of this unwritten thing that just sort of happens.
Yeah, I'll weigh in. I think the first thing, you know, speaking as a composer, I'm an engineer, but I'm not really an engineer. I'm like, I can engineer my own stuff adequately. Steve thinks completely differently as an engineer, as he should. But I think the first thing is trust. Is you get into situations that are dire, and you're with someone and you watch how they figure it out. One of the first things that happened when Steve first started working with me is I had a huge project. I think it was a 5-hour long public television doc, and some of my tracks got corrupted, and all of a sudden some of the sessions, which was looming, the mixes delivering, and he came in and figured out some way to put him into iTunes, and I don't know what it was, but it was so above and beyond
I remember that.
me. And the thing is, when you're the composer, you know, the engineer is, I'm the engineer's client, but my client, I can't blame anything on the engineer. If those tracks had never been able to be opened, that would have been it. I would have been dead in the water. And then the next thing that we did is this crazy film called Downtown Express, which, I mean, I don't really think any two people on the planet could have pulled off what, you know, this low budget feature film, these ridiculous live recording places. And so, I mean, eventually you go, you know, this guy can figure it out on his feet, and I trust him. The other thing is having fun. This is supposed to be fun. I mean, we're supposed to be enjoying music, and Steve and I have a really good time. We laugh, and we work with amazing players, and we get great results, and the clients are all happy, and it's a wonderful, joyous collaboration.
Okay, we have just 1 or 2 minutes left, but I want to open it up again to folks, and anybody can contribute here. I know technically Eve is not in the class, and Maria, if you want to ask anything or say anything, feel free to. No?
Kiana's got a question.
Kiana, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I almost hit Control Save almost 4 times during this whole
Yes, I don't know if you guys noticed that I was doing it. I was doing it very, very frequently. Yes, you must save very frequently.
And backup, and luckily backup is that much.
Yeah. This was all backed up. It's on 2 drives at work. It's on 2 drives at home. Plus, it's on a cloud somewhere. You know, that's essential.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and also I'll just briefly speak of this. Is that you know, Michael sent me the tracks. He brought them on a drive. We had them stuff in the cloud. You know, the last thing that we want is to get there and no one has a part. You know, or we're missing something. I mean, again, you know, when you're paying the engineer, the studio, the musicians, the film crew, the assistants, the the last thing you want is dead in the water.
Mm-hmm.
People still got to get paid.
I have one more question.
Go ahead, Tatiana.
So I'm a writer myself. Like, writing is like my first love and my first passion. And I always find that, like, a lot of people, especially today, you know, they'll say that writing is dead because of the way that like our media landscape has changed. But being that, like, in this industry, it's like the way that I see it is like you need writers. How would you respond to like people making that statement about writers?
It's ridiculous. I mean, God, you see, my brother's an actor. He's done it, and the whole thing of becoming a successful actor is being able to read a script or a book and decide whether that's good writing or not. I don't think there's anything else to it. If the writing's not good, forget it. We're the greatest composer in the world, greatest actors in the world. It all comes down to writing.
And I'll say this too. I don't know what I hear people talk about more, that something's dead because of a new technology, or how much technology has changed our life, and they can't believe they used to do it the old way. So it's all noise. I mean, I don't know. I look at my life 10 years ago, and I look at my life now, and technology's made it better, not worse. The only thing technology's made obsolete is obsolete technology, and I'm a human. I'm not technology. So, I still got some fight left. I don't think anything is obsolete that's human. The technology might be outdated. Even an old submarine intercom microphone from Russia still has a place. Um, you know,
And that I could not have written that tagline better for the entire session. Okay, that is the perfect place to wrap it up with the Russian submarine microphone, which I think I heard on the D train a couple of weeks ago too. So, but I just wanted to thank you guys. This is an amazing session. The one thing that, and I'll end it with this. This is the hostess prerogative here. The host's prerogative. The hostess with the mostest. The clear thing that came through all of this is creativity and artistry. And whether it be music or writing or visualization, the ability to think abstractly and create on our own palettes, whether it be music, whether it be visuals, whether it be graphics, whether it be acting, whether it be coordinating and managing, is what this project was about. And I think that's why this is as far as I know, this is the last masterclass. And I think this is a good place to wrap things up in terms of the MOME project. So,
understandable.
Okay. So with that, I want to thank Steve and Michael so much. I've learned a hell of a lot.
Fantastic. I learned a lot too, just sitting there quietly. So much fine nuances that goes in that you learn.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Eve. And a big thanks to Karen. I mean, because she's sort of the conductor behind the curtain. Okay. She's the wizard. Who keeps all the levers going, and you don't always see her doing everything in every element of what's going on. So Brendan gets all the credit, and I can say that because he's on vacation. He's not here to yell at me. But I know Karen is basically the master of this project and what happened. So I want to personally say thank you so much, Karen, for this. This is a wonderful project, a wonderful job. So congratulations. And with that, I will say thank you once again. And if anyone has anything else to say, I guess that's it. So this will be available. The recording will be available shortly. And I want to thank everybody for your attention. Have a great, safe, and dry holiday weekend. And stay tuned. There'll be more about what's happening in terms of the wrap of the project shortly. And as we do come and wind things down. Anything else, Karen? Nope.
I think that's it. Just stay tuned, guys. The episodes are moving through post. Curtis, I see you here. You guys are doing an amazing job, and I absolutely cannot wait to share the finished products with you all. It is, I mean, every time we get to work on these things, it's just truly astounding to me. All of the elements come together in such a way that is so powerful, and this is a truly, truly powerful series, guys. So I'm just super excited to share the final products with you all soon.
Excellent. Okay, everybody, have a great afternoon. Have a great morning, Maria, in Mongolia. And we will see everybody soon. Take care.
Soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.